Welcome, everybody, to the Music Production Podcast. This is Brian Funk, also known as AfroDJMac, and today I've got a very special guest. It's fellow Ableton Certified Trainer, Mark Towers, and Mark has been working on some really cool stuff with Isotonic, the Arcade series, and now the Arcade series returns. Some really fun toys I've been playing with quite a bit lately, so I'm very happy to talk to him. So, hi Mark, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, thank you very much for the invite.
Of course, of course. Thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm loving your work.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, so what's going on? How was that so I guess maybe I'll say the work I'm talking about right now and we'll of course talk about much more too, but
Yeah,
is the return of the Arcade series.
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's just come out last week,
Hmm.
which is the follow-up to the first pack, as you know, with Isotonic. So yeah, it's been out for about a week now. Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of get feedback and see how people are responding. You spend I think I spent about 6 months building this one. Just locked away. So to get it out there is quite good, and get feedback off people is quite nice.
Yeah, well, that's a big project. I would imagine it would have to be. So
Yeah,
the Arcade series, just to I'll give my summation of it if you want to add, but it's basically some Max for Live sequencers that are all inspired by old school arcade games. So you've got one called Ghost, which is built off Pac-Man. It's like Pac-Man without Pac-Man.
that's the one.
And
Yeah,
there's Space Invaders, Frogger, there's Arkanoid, and then the
yeah.
original series was based off of Pong and Pinball
hmm
and I think I'm forgetting one now.
Uh,
Asteroids.
Asteroids, and then one we had to call, for legal reasons, Tetric.
Tetric, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're really fun devices because they kind of it's almost like playing a game, and it takes over your push or your launch pad or whatever control you're using, and you get to just kind of make these sequences that are I would say it's like kind of a controlled randomness,
Yeah.
controlled chaos kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that was the original idea. Well, there's quite a few ideas that led to the creation of these packs, and I think one of them was just my kind of geeky, inquisitive nature, as just seeing what you could do. And
Yeah.
I think when the push first came out and I started tinkering with the Max for Live side, I think it'd been a while actually. I think I'd had a push, and then with updates to Max for Live, or just the introduction of Max for Live, I started exploring it and realizing that you could actually control all of the things on push. And the main thing that attracted me was this 8x8 grid. And I think as soon as I realized, hang on, you can completely design something completely different to go on there, I think that's when the penny dropped. I don't know when you first got push and you played with the drum sequencer and then the sort of keyboard layout, and it has these different modes, and you realize this grid lends itself to lots of different applications. And with Max for Live, it's like, oh well, I can build something, I can do something myself. And I think that was the moment where you start thinking what can I actually do with this? And I can't remember how I got to the arcade stuff. I think I was just playing around with lots of different patches that I'd done, and then I might have been on the phone to Darren from Isotonic, Darren E. Cowley, who runs Isotonic, and at the time he was saying, well, if you've got any other devices, it would be a great thing to do. And it's like, yeah, I've got loads of ideas, so I hadn't actually built anything else then, but I don't know, it just became this kind of open sort of format where you could kind of take inspiration from an old game, and there's so much to choose from, and there's so many ways of adapting some kind of playability from a game into a sequencer. They go very hand in hand, I think. So yeah, that's kind of how that kind of happened, really.
Yeah, that was the thing I was most excited about when Push came out, was all the sequencing, especially the drum sequencer, because that was always something I was trying to find a way around when I would be writing music, was, how to get started with drum sequences. And for the most part, it was really either just performing it on pads or drawing it in.
Yeah.
And, the mouse is only so inspiring,
Yeah.
So I was excited about that. And even the layout of the notes was great because I'm a guitar player. and it really looks like a guitar to me. The layout, the chord shapes are very similar.
Yeah.
But I think like anything else, you start falling into your regular patterns and the things you do a lot. And I do it on guitar, the same chord progressions or shapes.
Yeah.
And so I got a kick out of like how you can like kind of play around with the layout of the notes on push. So you can do like,
Yeah.
instead of the notes just going horizontally, or I'm sorry, vertically, they can also now go horizontally. And I find myself doing things I wouldn't normally do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what really excited me about what you're doing, is that now it's something I definitely wouldn't normally do, because it's all these much different kinds of layouts and approaches to, writing melodies and composing rhythms and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's still really exciting for me, is the thought of what could you do next. And I kind of enjoy other devices that are coming out that sort of do take control of things like push and launchpad, any sort of controller that just gives you this sort of wider palette of ways of interacting with it. Because for so many years, I'm not a classically trained musician. I dabble with the keyboard, and for so many years, that's all I was doing, was just playing with MIDI keyboards. And then it feels like in the past few years, the way push and other controllers are working, it's just completely opened it up. And I guess it's breaking down some of the boundaries of, well, you need to know how this musical instrument works to be able to kind of progress to this instrument. And all of a sudden, we've got this completely new system. I think that's probably where the game thing came from, because for like me and probably a lot of people, games is something I do understand. So if I could try and link the two together, I guess it was my way of justifying my what's the best way of saying it? Justifying my credibility with this instrument, if you like.
Yeah.
I've been playing games all my life, so the video games, that is. So
yeah, same here. Those a lot of those games that you've converted into push instruments, I grew up playing. And
but to get back to the playing with the push initially, I think one of the things I was tinkering with, or was trying to play with, I was using a lot of hardware sequencers at the time. I think it was around the same time push came out, and I was using I don't know if you use any Electron sort of
the analog rhythm and the
heat. So I was
Love
using Machine Drum and the Mono Machine at the time. I was really in love with the sequencer and the way the parameter lock works, and I think when I first played with the sequencer on push, and the first thing I was thinking was, can you do that? Could you do parameter locks? Which now you can kind of do. You can do the automation sort of per steps. But when it first came out, that wasn't a feature. And I remember thinking, there must be a way of doing this with Max for Live. I'm going to try and figure this out. But it turned out to be way, way more complicated than I thought at that stage anyway. So, but yeah, that's all kind of happening now, which is great as well.
Yeah, the parameter lock stuff, on the Electron gear is great. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of funny. Like, I've had my analog rhythm now. I might be going on 3 years with it, 2 or 3 years anyway. And it took me a long time to really wrap my head around it for whatever reason. I mean, now when I mess with it, I get it a lot more. But there was a funny like kind of point where my friend just picked up a Lindrum, like the old school big Lindrum, which is awesome, but when you sequence things, it's a little, you can't really do it live. You got to sort of like pre-set up your patterns, because you can't change things on the fly. You got to always press stop before you can really do much. And it was like playing with that and like kind of realizing, oh, I wish it could do this. I wish I could do that. That then I realized, oh, that's all the stuff they do now on the rhythm.
Yeah.
That you can accomplish. They've like it was like somebody was playing with this machine and said, too bad you can't do this, and then put that in theirs. And I guess that's like kind of a lot of like your thinking, like it's this sort of like, I wish you could do that. Let's see if I can figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I was the same with, I think it was the Mono Machine was my first Electron. And that probably took me a year until I was really starting to get interesting results from it, and quick results. I think you can spend a lot of time, like you say, tweaking something offline, and then you've got something. But there was this, I knew you could use it more in a live situation and be doing all of those things live, almost doing the sequencing live, and it worked quite well. But that took me about a year, I think, until I was getting those kind of results. And then when I moved on to other Electron boxes, it was a much quicker learning curve. And it's interesting how that sets a sort of a standard, in that every time now I get a new piece of hardware, if it doesn't have some of those features, it's like, well, it sounds great, but if it doesn't have this kind of functionality, I feel like it's a real hindrance because I've got so used to it,
Right.
Which maybe is a bad thing, because the standards become sort of high on everything.
Well, you see that in a lot of the comment sections on certain blogs when a new piece of gear comes out and they announce the whole giant, like, 87 points of features, and then someone will say, like, but I can't control velocity with aftertouch. Like some like obscure feature that they want. And it's funny, like I'm at this weird point where, like, as much as I want my gear to do everything, I find I get more done when it's a little more focused, and sometimes things are left out. Where it's, you kind of like, for me, I kind of see, like, all right, this is this piece's strength right here, and then this one has this strength, and then kind of just play to it, rather than wanting everything to be like a full functioning DAW that will vacuum your carpet and bring you a drink when you're thirsty.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just for about a year, I've just been exploring the sort of Eurorack. So I've just been putting a little Eurorack system together, which has been interesting.
Nice.
And that's probably really challenged my sort of perspective of what I thought about technology, just because similar to you, really, in the past there's always been something that's had a dedicated purpose, and I've looked for the core strengths of that instrument or that piece of equipment. And then working with some of the Eurorack stuff, I'm finding myself repurposing modules to do different things, and one day I'll use this module as a sound source, the next day it's going to be some sort of modulation, and it has made me think differently about that, because I am changing things each time I use it, and it's coming out differently. So I'm in a weird transitional process at the moment with regards to use of equipment, I guess. Yeah.
Right. I haven't dabbled in the Eurorack stuff yet, and it's mostly because I know. I don't know. I know it's a money pit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing.
That's what I'm afraid of, personally. I know that, because I know how I am, and I'm gonna want like every single module that comes out, and it's but the possibilities are pretty awesome. It's like there's a cool creativity that goes into it, and like you're kind of building your instrument too. It's not just making the music, but it's also like building your tool.
Yeah.
Which I like.
I know you can do that with software as well, and I think that's where Max for Live is great. If you don't mind getting your hands dirty with a little bit of the sort of programming side, it's got that same sort of DIY ethos, and I think with the amount of resources out there now, it's more possible than it was before to come up with something unique that fits your own personal sort of workflow. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I have to imagine that it's going to get interesting, in the coming months, now that Ableton's acquired Cycling 74.
Absolutely.
So I imagine there's going to be some cool new integrations and advances and whatnot.
There's always been a few wish lists, so I'm hoping they're going to be answered, definitely.
How long have you been doing like Max programming?
I think I first started Max it's probably when I was at university, so that's like 2002 or something. But I stopped for quite a while. I think when I was first using it, there was no Max for Live back then. There was no, Ableton was a very young company back in 2002. Yeah. So they were very separate worlds. And I think I'd started using Ableton then, and I was using Max as well, but not together. They're very separate. So the kind of stuff I was doing in Max and the kind of things I was using Ableton or whatever DAW I was using at the time, they were very kind of separate. And then I think I left Max alone for quite a while. And then I think I picked it up again when, I think it was when Max for Live first was kind of announced, and I thought, well, I know how to use Macs. I think there's got to be something worth playing with. So I kind of tinkered and almost relearned Macs again, with Macs for Live. And so I guess Macs for Live probably, I don't know, maybe like 5 years or something, really. But I had dabbled in Macs a long time ago.
Yeah, I've kind of always had this on my list of things I need to start learning, Macs for Live being that.
Yeah.
But I haven't gotten too far. I made like a filter, a bit crusher,
Cool.
and had a little meter moving around. And, I made like 3 or 4 devices that are, already exist in Live anyway, but just kind
Sure.
of to learn. But it's hard for me to find the time,
Yeah.
I've there's so many people like you, especially, that are making such cool things that I'm kind of like, all right, well, if I don't do it, other people are still doing it.
Yeah.
So, thank you for your work.
Well, thank you.
You've
Well,
saved me from having to figure out how to do these things. But
Yeah.
the programming side was never something I experimented with much. But I still think in my head somewhere I'm going to do that. At some point, start investigating it.
I guess, I mean, for me, it's always about, I guess, knowing where you're at. I think I spend probably more time doing Macs for Live programming now, compared to previously, where I'd spend more time actually making music. So that, like, I'm the same. Time is always an issue, and it's having to work out how much time I've got, to do some programming work, to do some just creative making music, and everyone's at different levels. Some people have more time to make music, but that's what they're amazing at. That's what they're really good at. And I guess my drive for like pushing with Macs for Live work was probably what I considered where my flaws were as a musician. So the reason I'm making sequences, for example, is because I probably don't think I'm that great at coming up with melodies compared to the next person. So it's make a tool that can do it. That's kind of the drive for me. So, yeah, maybe that sheds some light on that.
That's smart. It's kind of like hiring an employee almost to help you with the part of the job you need some help with.
The downside is you can spend a year programming some devices and not be making a lot of music. But for me, the end goal is to have like this super collection of devices I've made that I can then make music with. So, but who knows? Things change all the time, and what you want to get out of it changes. So
I'm trying to get myself into more of a making music period of time, because I'm in a way kind of done the same thing you've done with collecting sounds, making my own instruments, sampling things, just kind of ad nauseum, to the point where now I have so much that it's time to start putting it to use. But it's definitely been like this goal of mine to have like my own collection of sounds of the types of things that I'm into, so that I can, just have this resource and not have to, every time I want to make music, do sound design or work on like that kind of thing. I already have it ready.
Yeah.
But
I know what you mean.
I fell in the quicksand though, where it's just like, oh, let me try to make this sound now, and like where that's in a way is becoming as much of a thrill as actually just making music too.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I totally get the sort of separating what it is you're doing. Because I think when I was probably for the first 5, maybe even 10 years, when I first started making music, I didn't separate the processes. So doing sound design and doing composition were just the same thing, and I'd do them at the same time. And it got a bit frustrating because, you can spend hours just tweaking a sound and then, it's ready now. But I've completely lost all of my enthusiasm for this project that I'm working on. So it wasn't until later on that I really started to value separating the processes, and spend a day just tweaking sounds, and that's okay. That's fine. And then so that they're ready when you're ready to use them. And that's probably the same with the Mac stuff, really. but I do enjoy it. So I really enjoy it, and I find it quite a creative process as well. So I think it's as fulfilling to me as it is to be making some music. To be, I almost enjoy it as much as sitting there programming, coming up with stuff. It kind of satisfies something in me. So
Yeah.
I never look at it like oh, I'm spending way too much time programming. I'm not making any music. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm just kind of enjoying all the different processes and steps that I'm going through, really. But yeah, understanding sort of time boundaries is definitely important.
Well, I've really come to notice this, that a lot of us, music producers, we're really doing the job of like many people. If you go back in time a few years, like you're recording yourself, you're performing, you're designing your sound, you're editing, you're mixing, you're mastering, you're promoting, you're doing
Yeah,
a billion jobs that used to be, teams of people. So
yeah,
I think it's something to, think about. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just kind of bouncing back and forth between the different aspects of what we do. But if you want to be productive, I think it is kind of important to sort of like turn this part of your brain off and turn that part
yeah,
on, like flip the switch and, decide I'm doing this or that. Otherwise, it's easy to just kind of run in circles and you're doing a little bit of everything.
yeah, definitely. It's the different hats that you wear.
Yeah.
It's definitely, yeah. Understanding that is really important. And like you say, I'm just thinking about the production process, but actually, like, yeah, as soon as you are wanting to release and perform, then there's all these other steps involved, and knowing those steps and who you are as you're fulfilling those duties is really really important. Otherwise, it would just seem like an absolutely mammoth task. When you
Uh-huh.
when you really put it down on paper, you are doing a heck of a lot of work. And for a lot of us, you're just one person, doing all of this. So
Yeah.
mm,
It's fun though. It's fun finding that balance, and it's at least all of the parts for the most part are pretty enjoyable.
yeah, I agree.
But there are definitely some that I like better. I guess obviously I like the sound design and the, creating these like instruments that have some sort of vibe that I'm looking for. I love that, and a lot of
Yeah,
times my inspiration comes out of the sound, where it might not be that I have a melody necessarily or a beat. It's just like this sound is what's pulling me into wanting to make
yeah.
music. So that's,
And you've got so many packs. How many packs have you got out now?
oh man.
You stopped counting.
No, I didn't. I just did one yesterday. Because I released some music that I recorded on the OP1, but
Right.
and this was kind of like a different direction for me where I wanted to just kind of be fast and quick and make something. So I used the OP1's 4-track recorder and just plugged the mic in, recorded like rock songs. And it was such an awesome experience because like you've got your headphones on, they're plugged into the OP1, there's a mic, it's plugged in, and you're just walking around the room, moving your whole studio like in the palm of your hand kind of thing. So it was a lot
That's
of
cool.
quick, it wasn't, there's not much you can do. I can't EQ my mic going into the OP1. I can't put a compressor on it. It's just, you just turn the level the way you want it. But I
Pretty old
made
school,
the
yeah.
a little pack out of those sounds, just basically used them as samples to make instruments, and that was 158 of the free ones, and then there's I don't know, like 30 or 40 of the like bigger packs now.
Yeah.
So I've no excuse to not be making music. I've got every sound I could dream of pretty much, but I don't know, there's always more places to explore. The world just keeps expanding or something.
Yeah.
And now I'm like really psyched to be using your stuff to kind of generate ideas and piece things together. I really think one of the ways I'm excited to use the arcade series, the new stuff. I mean, I've done this with the old stuff in the past, but a lot of times I'll be like, if I'm performing live, I'll do like my song, and then it's kind of like you just run into the next song, maybe do a little jam or something in between. But I love I've used the push pong for this quite a bit, where I'll set up like just sort of like a kick, just steady on the
Yeah.
4 to the floor thing, and then just kind of let push pong play some
Ah,
melodies.
cool.
And you set the key, and you can kind of set which notes you want, but let that kind of do its random thing, and then kind of build around it.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
that's cool.
it's sort of part generative music, part orchestrated. It's improv, and there's you have control over certain things, but then you got the kind of like I said, controlled chaos of the arcade
Yeah,
series,
yeah.
kind of doing things that keeps it interesting, keeps it
Yeah.
moving.
That's cool. I didn't really think of when you come out with these things, you just kind of think of, I'm making a tool for something I would
Yeah.
use it for, and hopefully someone else will enjoy it. But that's really interesting you say that you're kind of fitting it in between songs. And I can't remember what I think Pong was the first one I did actually, and I think the initial idea was, well, it just be, like I said before, it'd be a really cool way of someone like me being able to come up with some melodies. So if I just record enough of it,
Yeah.
there'll be loads of little segments
Uh-huh.
that I could take out, and I've got a starting point for a song there. But I do like the idea of this live performance. There's always been a live aspect to them, so that they're live friendly. I mean, that's really why they need to work on a control surface. So, like the end goal, which is probably nearly, I think that's probably there now, was to be able to have an Ableton like a live set with 8 or 9 tracks, and each track has its own dedicated arcade sort of device on it. So I could kind of flick through, and I've got this either wacky drum sequence or interesting chord progression thing or melodic thing. But yeah, that was just to satisfy my own sort of idea of just having this live set with, and really doing something really cool on the control surfaces, because they look beautiful, don't they? These, the
Yeah.
control surfaces now, the RGB pads, they do look amazing. And that's to be able to be using that live is a really they're really beautiful machines. So that's cool. I'd like to see some videos if you got any, or any recordings of
I'll look
stuff
around.
you've
Yeah.
done. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I've definitely done. I've got something that I use. I used the. I think it was push pong to kind of generate some melodies in the background of like a track that I did. I did this track for a Kickstarter video for my wife's company, and also I used like, this is like a couple birds with one stone type of deal. But she needed some music for a Kickstarter thing. It was right after Stranger Things came out, so I wanted to like make like music like that, and I wanted to play with your stuff. So it was like kind of scratching all these itches at once. And I'll send that to you. It was like
That'd be
I think
great.
it was when I
Yeah.
did the Polymoog pack. I think I
Right,
did a
okay.
couple. I used those instruments in conjunction with
okay.
your sequencers are generating some of the melodies.
Sure.
But I don't think I told you about this. My buddy runs this Long Island Retro Gaming Expo.
Right.
So we just did the 3rd year, and I've been like kind of like the house music guy. And he the thing got really big. It's like, I don't know, like quadrupled in size since he started. And the first year we had no idea how many people were into retro video gaming.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
to the point where there was a line around the building, and due to the fire code we couldn't let people in, so we had to like
wow.
wait till people left. Because what it is there's just all these old games set up to play, and there's tournaments, and there's speakers talking about anything, whether it's some people were talking about the music, some people were talking about just like the different gameplay or some obscure game that came out on some weird
Yeah.
system. But what I was doing, I was playing these 8-bit vinyls that he had too, but in between I had my push and a controller or two with it set up to just kind of do improvisational 8-bit music. So I had like a lot of my packs that I've made through samples of like the NES and the Game Boy.
Yeah.
And I was using your stuff too for this kind of like, I would get it going and then like kind of set up a sequence so then I could start thinking about like the chord progressions and
Oh, okay.
the other stuff that would go over it. But it was a big part of what I was doing, was just letting that stuff go. And it was really funny watching, because these aren't like, the people aren't there to see me. I'm just sort of in the background doing
Sure.
this. They hardly know what I'm doing. But people will come up and look at all these like lights moving around and they
Yeah.
like start getting interested in that. And then they realize, what you're doing. And I kind of show them like how I got like the game sequencer
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on the screen, and like, wow, that's so cool.
That's good. That's really
So
cool.
it was a fun like application of the arcade series, like in a place
Yeah,
it should
yeah.
really be happening.
Yeah.
This like
Oh, that's
retro
really
gaming
cool.
thing. So
Yeah, we have a few of those in the UK actually.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be good to do something similar there. Yeah, that's given me some ideas. Yeah, yeah, we've got well, I've done a few installations over the past sort of 2 years, and I've always kind of gone with the arcade sort of theme. So we've done a couple of things where I've actually had this idea of building I think it was when the first arcade pack was out, and one of my friends is a carpenter, so we built this like a 4-player, like a mini arcade cabinet. It was like a cross, like a 4-way, like a miniature 4-way desktop arcade cabinet. But rather than having a screen, it had like a slot where you put a launch pad in. So you had 4 of them, and then they all kind of connected to one laptop underneath. So when the public come across, they put the headphones on, and each of them is controlling a different arcade device with their own launch pad. So the launch pad was just like a quick way of getting this interface in there. But I really like the idea of building like little bespoke sort of housings with like old arcade sort of themes, but with with some sort of control surface underneath that's actually kind of doing all the work, if you like.
Yeah, I think I saw photos
yeah.
or videos of that when you were doing that
Yeah,
a
probably.
year or
Yeah,
two
it's
ago,
pretty-
maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know where
But
I
we
can
just-
find that? I want to put that in the show
I
notes with
can
this.
send you. I can
Okay,
send you some
cool.
stuff over. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we're just in the process of revamping it. So we've got a few things happening this year. So yeah, we're going to be like doing them up and building another like a desktop sort of. If you remember the old like sort of Pac-Man or Space Invaders tabletop arcade,
Yeah,
it was like a
Of course.
coffee table type thing. So trying to build something like a small version of one of those, but with a control surface underneath
That's
that people
awesome.
can still play the game with, but it'll still be using like Max for Live and probably an Arduino in there somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah, my buddy, the same guy, restored an old Miss Pac-Man table. So it's
Wow.
awesome. It's like, you sit
Yeah.
across from your friend, you can put your drink right on it and just play the
Yeah.
game.
oh, so cool.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
look awesome, don't they? They look so good.
Yeah, they actually like redid all the art. They because his brother's does printing. So they
Oh, right.
they redid like the cabinet art and put it onto the plexiglass, and it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. It looks, I can't tell the difference anyway.
That's cool.
I've had this idea for a long time, and I haven't done anything with it. So I'll throw it out to you. But I thought this would just be so cool. Are you familiar with like the MAME machines?
Yeah.
So they're like the emulators you can get for your computer
Yeah,
and
yeah.
play all the old arcade games.
Yeah, yeah.
So my friends have done this where they've built cabinets, put the old TV, the old tube TV in there, and
Yeah.
built arcade controllers that basically just send out keyboard, X, Y, up is like W or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just translates that information from the joystick into just a keystroke.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to do this where you can also, because you can also do keystrokes in live, you can map
Yeah.
your keyboard. I've always wanted to do something where you're actually playing the game. You're playing like,
Okay.
Double Dragon or whatever. You're walking down the street and fighting
Yeah, yeah.
people. And at the same time, though, you're also triggering like musical events that are like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
time, that are in key, that work.
Yeah.
I think that would just be such a cool piece to have. Or maybe you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
even keep like the sound effects from the game going, but like cut out the music.
Process them or something.
Yeah,
I
so-
definitely like Yeah, I like the idea of that. But you could totally do that with
I don't even know if you need Max for Live for that, really.
No, you probably could do if they can dish out keystrokes, if there's a way of getting them
Yeah.
into the computer. Um, but if not, that's a really simple Arduino thing. We did one end of last year at this exhibition. I'll send you a picture of it, but it was like a little, another like little tabletop, kind of like a wooden base with a sort of tinted, sort of dark perspex, and it had a launch pad inside. But to control it, we just got four. Oh, they were USB controllers, but they were like the old NES controllers.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Cool.
but you could absolutely do it with NES controllers, but they were just all going into. What did we do? I think they went straight into the computer, but we did one another time with a joystick going into Arduino. There's always a way of kind of converting it if you need to. But I guess if you do the Max for Live thing, you've got a bit more scope as to what it's doing. Like if you want to just get the controls, but do something with certain conditions, so it still works musically.
Yeah.
So because it could be quite chaotic if you're doing
Oh, yeah.
Double Dragon and it's just like
Button smashing.
doing the same kicks all the time, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
triggering the same chord. So you could totally do that with Max for Live. Set some conditions so it works as a musical piece as well. But yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be fun to. You're actually playing the game and you're actually making some music.
Yeah.
A sort of like, pipe dream live show of mine would be like, you playing your songs, but then there's like this other part in the set where like you get two people to like play Street Fighter against each other or something, and it's like making music still.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's one of the nice
Always
things about the
different.
whole, the game kind of ethos, in that this kind of bringing people together and collaborating, on something. Yeah.
That'd be quite fun. Speaking of Arduino, I wonder if are you familiar with the Soulsby at Megatron?
Yeah, I've not actually played it. I've checked it out quite a bit online. But yeah, I've seen it, listened to it. Yeah.
I have two experiences with Arduino. It's that at Megatron, and also my brother-in-law made a emulator, a video game emulator on a
Oh, cool.
little tiny like computer about the size of like I don't even know. It's like it's just, I don't know, 3 inches by 3 inches.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
just got an HDMI cable that comes out and then some USB plugs. But it's got like 800 old school video games on it.
That's cool. I backed the Ardu Boy project on Kickstarter last year. I don't know if you've seen those, the
I don't
Ardu
think
Boy.
so. No.
I think you can just buy them now anyway, but they're like, I don't know, $30 or $40 or something. But it was a Kickstarter, and it's essentially like it is size of a credit card, and it's a Game Boy. They've themed it on a Game Boy. But it's essentially Arduino with a tiny little OLED screen, but it completely looks like a Game Boy, and it's just got loads of kind of those kind of games, sort of different
That's
versions.
cool.
But beautiful looking things, and the OLED screens look amazing as well. They're really nice.
Oh, nice. I gotta look that up.
Yeah.
I love the Megatron. It's a great and it's one of the coolest things about it is he keeps updating it with new software.
Yeah.
So at first it was just the Megatron 8-bit digital synthesizer, but then it became like the Mega Drum, I think he called it, and then it became like there was a wavetable synthesizer. There's one with a really cool delay in it.
Right.
Then he did like the string machine, the Arp Odyssey. I mean, how cool is that? That like, it's the same piece of gear, and he just sends out like this little tiny, very small file that has a whole different, entirely different soundboard. I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's not a soundboard because it's digital, but it's just entirely different mechanism to run on. And then you print out these little overlays. You just cut out the little holes for the knobs and you just lay it right on top. And then it tells you what the controls do. And
That's really cool.
I think just for, I'm pretty sure it's a fairly small, homemade, maybe even one-man operation. But the value is incredible. Like, I think it was $300-$400, something like that. And it's so many machines in one, and it keeps
Yeah,
getting better. It keeps getting more exciting.
I love that idea. I think they've actually done I don't know if it's a Eurorack version of that, but Salisbury have done a Eurorack
Yeah, that's kind
module.
of what they're up to these days, it looks like.
Yeah, but there's a few. I think some of my favorite modules that I've got for the Eurorack have got um, that kind of design to them. So I'm using things like they're not the most exciting modules, but when you sort of want to think about how much I'm using them, things like the Expert Sleepers disting, for example, it's like 16 modules in one, but then since I bought it, he's released various updates, and there's a heck of a lot more in there now. And I like that idea. If you're doing that from the start, I guess it's about thinking about sort of aesthetically what it's going to look like, because if it's over designed, it's got a very specific function, it makes it difficult to do an update that then makes sense. But if it's kind of left a bit open from design, even down to the pots and the buttons and labeling, that's a really cool thing, and a way of getting, I guess, people to buy into the product. If there's this idea of that, yeah, there's going to be updates and you get more choice as to what it is. You're not just buying one thing, you're buying a whole range of things in one piece, as you say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he could have easily decided that he was going to make different boxes for each one of these things, and you would have to buy all these different boxes. But they're just free updates. Just download it.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's so cool.
It's really good.
Hey, and the design, I think, is really smart, because there's 6 knobs along the top, and those will change depending on what you've got loaded. But then there's also these 2 knobs in the middle that they're like dials. It's really, I've never seen anything like it, but like you turn it and kind of select the parameter, and then the knob itself becomes the value. And there's 2 of these, so there's like kind of like a red and a green on each one, and it's amazing how much functionality has been squeezed into this little thing. There's no screen, there's no menu diving. It's just crank in where you want it, and then play with the value.
Yeah. Which I think I really like that. If you can design something that in this day and age where it doesn't have a screen but it feels intuitive, and you're not having to kind of get the manual out each time, that you almost learn it. You learn the kind of, the presses, the turns, and what they mean. That's forms part of your relationship with that instrument, effectively. I really like that idea. I think I probably learn things quicker, actually, when I'm learning them like that, where this is a kind of a hands-on, feeling rather than visually what I'm seeing. Because I think it's easy to sort of get used to it when there's a screen anyway. You get used to sort of, I know there's going to be some text appear that's going to tell me what's happening. I think something else happens when you're feeling your way around an instrument, and it sort of works.
It forces you to just turn things and not just look at pages and turn your head. I had that sort of experience, and I can't give anyone a real informed opinion on it because it was only a couple minutes, but I was playing around with the DeepMind 12. Is it 12?
Oh, okay.
Called DeepMind 12.
Yeah.
It was at a Guitar Center, and they had it out, and it seems cool. It had some cool sounds, but I wasn't really like getting in there altering things too much, because there's a lot of like they packed so much into it that you need the screen, you need the menus and all that. That it kind of discouraged me from wanting to get in there and start playing with it and tweaking it. Now I'm sure, like, if I invested the money in it and had it in front of me all day, that would be a different story. But as far as like the immediacy of it, I was kind of like, I don't feel like going through the screen and finding where this crazy effect is to turn it down. Or
But I think that's so important. I think I'm definitely along a similar thread, in that I think when I'm considering, or if I'm trying something out, it's obviously sound quality is always going to be important and what it can actually technically do, but it's the interaction is just as important now for me, and how I'm interacting with it. I think there's only a few instruments that I've kept that I have to do a lot of menu diving with, but that's probably because I learned them at a time when I only had them, and I've got this, I don't know, this a relationship with them, shall we say. Whereas now, yeah, I really value like you say, the immediacy of being able to actually get on with something quickly, which is probably what really excites me with the Eurorack stuff. There's barely any screens, and any complex routing is all visual with patch cables. There is something really
to physically connect it.
Yeah, and it feels quick. It feels really quick, and I think software a lot of times is sometimes trying to offer those kind of similar workflows, but with obviously it's hinder isn't the right word. It's not hindered. It's probably more advanced, but from a human level, it is. The way you're interacting. There's always another click or another step. I guess that comes back to a lot of I think it's the fun thing about designing your own stuff, where even if it is software, is just thinking of those things and how can you make something that still feels intuitive and doesn't have too many clicks and taps and this menu and that menu. That's like for me, that gets in the way. That totally gets in the way of the creative process, whatever it is, whether it's making music or just doing some sound design. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I find like a lot of these things I run into when I'm using things on the iPad, where, it might be like mimicking a knob or a fader, and it just kind of feels a little weird. Like it's hard to there's like a point sometimes on like a lot of the interfaces with knobs where you're moving your finger, but then the knob sort of like stops moving because you got to go left and right, not up and down, or I don't know. But there are like a few apps that I really love that kind of throw that whole replicating a physical piece of gear out the window. So like an app like Patterning, I love a lot because it's not. You can't have that really in the real world anyway. That's where like the screen comes in. There's like Sound Prism I always liked quite a bit, which is I don't even know what to call it, but you kind of like pick the note on the right, and then it's like just a whole bunch of keys. It's a lot of like swiping to make notes and melodies and chords, and I like that a lot. It's to me like a nice use of that technology instead of just trying to do, it's never gonna feel as good as a real knob on the screen, as far as I can see, or the keyboards. Like I can't play the keyboard on the iPad. Like I can't play the keyboard anyway, but doing it on the iPad just doesn't feel like anything to me.
I think like you say, that's the thing, isn't it? Let the iPad and tablets do what they're best at, which is like, I'm a fan of patterning as well. It just couldn't exist in the real world, and I guess you could have it on a laptop or a computer, but actually on the screen, that's where it feels good when you're swiping with that kind of thing. But the kind of remaking sort of more physical looking knobs and buttons on the iPad doesn't really work for me. It always feels like it's missed the point of what the interface is about.
Yeah, I've got the new mono poly, but that Korg made, which sounds awesome. I really do like the way that sounds. But I have to hook up a keyboard to it to get any use of it. Though it does have the XY pad, which I do like. Like it's got that, to do your notes, and you can constrain it to scales. And to me, that's like a cool use of the interface. Like, XY pad, that's cool. That's not me trying to hit this little tiny key with my finger. And but I guess if you set it up a little bit, you spend a little time, MIDI mapping, then it becomes pretty cool. Yeah. But at the same time, now you're bringing it back to the physical. It sounds amazing though. I'm really pleased with the way that one sounds. I think it's one of the better sounding synths that have come out.
Really?
But I don't know. I mean, I understand they want it to look like the old gear. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But I don't particularly love the interaction with it. The knobs are kind of little, and like I said, like I'm turning the filter, I'm moving my hand up to move the knob, then it kind of gets stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
And I don't really
Off
know
the
like
screen.
where to move my finger to get it to
Yeah.
keep turning. It's just a funny thing. But I think that's like if I can bring it back to your stuff a little, the integration with the controllers is just great because it's like you're playing with it. You're not just like setting it up or, tweaking. You feel like you're really playing with it. There's that playability, and I think that comes across nicely, and it's perfect for the video game theme.
Yeah, I think that was always like I said before, just the control surfaces are there. That someone's already done the hard work, and that's it just feels like that there should be more of those things. When you look at really the doors, like Ableton, they're using these controllers, and it's starting to open up a bit now. But there was only really those couple of different screens, and it just feels like they could do so much more. And there's so many ways that you could be using those pads to to add expression to the music that you're making. But yeah, there's so much more to do. There's so as you start building these things, there's always so many ideas and things you just discover along the way, and it's like, oh, that's cool, I didn't think I could do this, but I can. Right, I need to shelve that for now because I've got to finish this project, but that's definitely something I'm going to come back to. So many little ideas and projects that I want to finish, but I'd also like to just see more coming out in general. I think there's like I said, I think these controllers are such really, really nice machines to play with, and Push 2 is just so, it just feels really good. It's just such a well-built machine. It feels really nice to play. I just want more things happening on it.
Yeah, it's nice. It's smooth. It's elegant. It's well built. It's my primary, tool to interface with computer electronic music. Even when I have like my hardware synths set up, like a lot of times I'm playing them with the push.
Yeah.
I'm not a keyboard player, so I'm much more familiar with the layout in this like kind of guitar, by fourths. Whoops.
Yeah.
That look for me is like just I recognize it. I see the chords on those pads. Whereas on the piano, like maybe I see them, but I don't have the finger muscle memory to get to it.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, I'm
so
the same.
I use it a lot, even just for that kind of stuff, where I'm not necessarily using Ableton Live, except just to route the MIDI.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's definitely been the center of my sort of setup for a while now as well. Yeah, and even with the hardware stuff, it's it just feels like a very capable centerpiece of the studio in a way.
Yeah, for sure. Good piece there. Good toy.
Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to ask you about some of your teaching.
Okay.
Because I do a little bit online for Berkeley, and I'm just curious what you're doing. It's creative sound technology. Is that what it is?
Yeah, although we've just changed the name, so we're just called music technology now, but we used to be. So that's a foundation degree. So in the UK, so we have like degree level study, and this course is it's essentially the first 2 years of a degree, like a 3-year degree course.
In person? Is this like in the classroom? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So so
I don't know much about the school or anything, so I wanted to ask you.
So I work for a college called Leicester College, which is where I'm based. We're sort of right in the centre of England, in the Midlands, and we run lots of different courses there. So we have sort of, age range. We get students from the age of 16 who have just finished their sort of compulsory education and are choosing to, go into a more specialist area. So
they finish at 16?
For compulsory education, and then they stay on and do, well, actually it's changed now. They'll be doing their sort of A levels, and it depends on where they are. But they can be doing, they can do that, or they can go to what we're what's called a further education college. So we might get students who are sort of 16 plus, who have chosen to do, I want to do music tech, and they might be doing that for a few years, and then they progress on to sort of a degree level study. So I teach on a few different courses, different levels, but the foundation degree, the music technology one, that's the course that I sort of manage, if you like, and teach on it as well. Yeah.
What kind of things do you cover in that?
Well, it's linked to a course that we have at the local university. So they do 2 years with us, then they go and do a final year at the university, and they come out with a full, what's called a BSc, which is a Bachelor of Science degree. So there's always this scientific angle. So even though they'll be doing modules where they're maybe doing composition and sound design and maybe some sort of performance, there's always a slightly scientific edge to it. But the other modules that they'd be doing would be things like acoustics and studio engineering and live sound, and business, music business. Quite a broad collection, really. I think we're quite conscious to give students a range of different subtopics within music technology to prepare them for where they're going next.
Yeah. So they get kind of like a whole bunch of things to dabble in, and then sort of they narrow it down a little bit later.
Yeah, I think usually by the time it gets to the final year, they've got a more focused idea of what kind of where they're actually going with their studies and their career. So a mixture.
That's great, because a lot of times, I mean, we've kind of touched on this already. You might think like, I want to be in music, and then there's a billion avenues you can go down that way. And then even when you focus it to like production or sound design, or like there's still so many like more focused paths you can go down. So it's nice that they get a little bit of exposure to different options.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's something we always say when we're meeting them, especially students that are quite at the beginning stages, and I don't know, some already have an idea as to where they're going, but even then it can change. I think I definitely fell into that category. I had one idea as to what I was going to do, and
me too. Yeah,
some of the things I'm doing now, it's like if you'd have told me then, I would not have believed you. But I'm just glad that I sort of was given the opportunity, to try different things out and sort of take things on board and work out if they were for me, and just trying to give some of that back to young students now, really, but also trying to make them aware that actually maybe you don't try to absolutely pin yourself down to this is what I'm going to do. For some people it's great, they absolutely know, and that's fine, but I think it's always good to keep your options open, really. And like you say, there's so many different pathways in these music industries now that the last thing you want to do is limit yourself.
Mm-hmm. Especially at such a young age, where you're still figuring out who you are as a person. And I know myself, like just like you, I never would have believed where I am right now, and I had a different idea. I wanted to be some like touring rock band, and now I realize I don't really want that. It's something I do like and enjoy, but being on the road, for instance, I don't want to do that. I had some fun, like little short tours, and as great as they were, it was still kind of nice to get home.
Yeah.
And I think I like to be home a little too much to get into that. I mean, it's a great way to see the world, and to kind of see the world, I guess. It's like a different kind of tourism. Because like as a tourist, you tend to go to like the popular spots, and you're just dropping in, looking through the window. But I found like, when you go and you play somewhere, at least like for that night, you're kind of part of the culture. You're creating the culture with the people, which is kind of cool. And you see a lot of times sides of it that most people don't get to see if they're just visiting. See what the local music scene is like is not always high on the list when you go visit a place. but at the same time, you wind up not staying there very long and not getting to see the things that you have to see when you go to that town. You know, how did you not go to that, monument or whatever it is, that park, see that natural wonder? Well, because we had to leave and go to the next
Yeah.
city.
Yeah, you're seeing it from a very specific angle, aren't you?
Yeah.
Really?
It's a
But
different
it's-
angle, which is cool.
Yeah.
But I think I know, like if I go to a place, I sort of like to settle in a little bit and just kind of
Yeah.
be there for a little while, see what it's all about. So, what do you, I don't know if you're allowed to tell me this, and if you're not, you can just say confidential, but what's next on the plate for you now that you've just finished all this hard work? Now what are you going to do?
Yeah, what's next? There's a couple of, well, between now and December, there's a few projects happening in the UK that I'm involved with, sort of like installation projects. So, yeah, just kind of building, more physical stuff really. So building, there's lots of stuff with Arduino. And like I said, revamping some of these physical arcade builds for these installations. But we're doing this. There's a really cool thing coming up I think it's in November. That's in London I think it's called We Are Robots.
That sounds
And
cool.
it's got this. It seems to be like a really fun kind of music expo thing. It's really open. There's some really good ideas behind it. And I think I'm there with a few other people from Ableton and other people we work with. And I'm doing a few bits for that, which is really cool. They're letting me just come up with some interesting installations that kind of promote, not necessarily just Ableton directly, but just promote sort of engagement with music and technology. So just making something. So I've got this idea of building this. Well, we'll see how it goes. But this giant, I like the idea of a giant sort of circuit board. A giant transparent circuit board, of which is an instrument that you can walk up to and kind of play, but you can see what's going on with the signal flow, and Ableton will kind of be in the middle of it, and it'll have sort of various controls and things. We'll see how that works out. So that and some of the arcade, some of the arcade builds. So get those jazzed up a bit and. Probably put the new arcade devices in there. That's probably enough until Christmas, and then probably some new devices next year. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing more arcade stuff. Totally could. There's plenty more games to draw inspiration from.
Yeah.
But maybe something a bit different next year. I think there's always going to be this thing in the devices I'm making. There's always just going to be this theme of satisfying my own kind of personal goals or needs, and it's just trying to take that to the next level. So it's probably going to be something that fills a gap for me personally, whether that's being able to come up with melodies and harmonies or I haven't released anything that actually makes sound yet. I mean, I tinker around with quite a lot of things, but I haven't actually released any instruments, so that might be on the cards next year. That might be the next step.
Oh, that's cool.
But I think I feel really satisfied with instruments and my more sound design skills, so I'd never feel the need to make something, because I'm always using hardware, software, synths and samplers, and feel really comfortable with them. And like I said before, most of the stuff I've come up with has always been out of necessity for myself. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I think that's a great way to inform like your decision on what you're going to work on next. I do that myself because I sort of feel like even if no one else likes it, even if it flops, I've got something for myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's probably my first question. Like, what do I suck at? Okay, that's why I'm going to build something that helps me out with this.
Yeah, and I think the world's a big enough place where there's plenty of people that have the same desire and the same need. Yeah, it usually tends to work out if you just kind of focus on that and like honest with yourself about what you need, what you would benefit from.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree.
I know there's been a few times where I tried to do something to sort of, thinking like people are going to want this, this is what people want.
Yeah,
And, it didn't really matter to anybody. It was
yeah,
just kind of like, because it was like, I wasn't doing it because I wanted it. I was just
yeah,
kind of doing it to get it done. And sometimes that stuff just doesn't, maybe like the passion, like we can sense it, it's not in there or something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had that before as well.
Half-hearted or something.
Yeah. Hmm.
So do you have a favorite one of your arcade devices? Is there one you find yourself going to the most? Can you tell me your favorite child?
My favorite game or the favorite arcade?
Well, the favorite. I'm asking you to choose between your creations here.
Oh, okay, right.
Your favorite child.
Which ones do I use the most? Well, the new pack's probably a bit too new. But I do really like Frogger. I'm using Frogger a lot, which was the sort of 8-step gate sequencer. I think I've been using a hardware version for a long time and I've also got a Eurorack one that does a similar-ish kind of thing. But I just seem to come up with for me, I come up with really nice sort of melodic content that I wouldn't usually do. So I'm really enjoying that one at the moment. And there is actually there's another one that I'm using a lot, which isn't out yet, which is it is actually part of the arcade pack. Well, it's going to be. There's a free thing coming out in a week or two, which is it's a version of Ghosts, but it's not linked to a controller. It's just it just pops up on the screen. But it's got the original. If you think of the original Pac-Man maze, like a full-size one, it's basically that. And I think by having the full-size maze, there's a lot more range for the melodic content that can be generated. So I've been using that. But when I'm using these things, I'm kind of building them and using them. So I'm never just...
Yeah.
That's the thing. I rarely just sit down and go, I'm just going to play with this. I'm always building and adding to it as I'm going. But
right.
Yeah, probably those two. So the Frogger and Ghosts LE. Yeah. How about you? Do you have one seen as...
Well, I'm learning them still,
Yeah.
And actually last night I spent a lot of time with Ghosts, trying to like really figure out what it was. And what I liked about the whole collection too, I must say, is that once I got my head wrapped around one, then they all kind of start making sense together.
Yeah.
So I think the first one I was starting to get was Arkanoid, and then I went to Frogger. And I like Frogger a lot, and I found Frogger was probably the one I felt like I had the most control over when I'm working with it. There's still like, you can get that like randomness if you want, but I really like how you can kind of just like, as the little frog is going across your push, you can get behind it and change the notes for the next lap of Frogger.
Yeah, it's probably the least random one out of the bunch.
It has a lot of potential for the randomness too, which is cool. But I like, I think that one's really fun because it can also, you can play with the timing a lot. You can do the rests. You can have things repeat and change it while it's repeating. And I think that one was really cool. But yeah, last night I started to understand more what was happening with the Ghosts one. And I like that a lot. It's fun to, throw in these different things. And I love the... I don't know why people don't do this more, but the kind of probability stuff.
Yeah.
Like whether a note will be triggered or not. There's some apps. The first time I remember seeing the probability was, I think it was called like Robot Drums on the iPad, something like that. And it was a super simple sequencer, but like I think it had like 16 steps. And just depending on how high you drew the bar was how probable that note would be to get triggered. And it was just super easy interface. But for me, like that random stuff is just such a great way for drums. I mean, like,
Yeah,
I'll put
totally.
my like kick on the 1 is 100%, my snare on the, the 2 and the 4 is 100%, but then there's all these little ghost notes that are like 5%, just kind of lingering around on
Yeah.
the, and that for me is a lot of fun. So with the ghosts, it's a lot of fun to oh, there's so much I want to talk to you about with this stuff. It's so much fun to like loop certain ghosts, so they're doing something predictable because
Yes.
you've built
Yeah,
in
yeah.
that, which is a great feature, that you can loop things, so you can
Yeah.
kind of like just capture what's happening at a little point in time. But with ghosts, and I don't know if it's the same with the other ones, but I know with ghosts anyway, you can capture one of the ghosts, which is
Yeah.
like kind of like one of your little sequencers,
Yeah.
and then
It's the
have
same with, it's just Ghost and Arkanoid that have that.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't explore that in Arkanoid yet. But with the ghost was so fun to have one ghost doing its predictable thing, and then
Yeah.
have this other one that's kind of random. Sometimes it triggers notes, sometimes it
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And I found it just really a nice way to make some music, in that the predictability of the one, but with the overlay of the kind of more random, it makes this like sequence just sound like it's not a loop anymore, but it's still familiar.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exactly what it was for. That was the idea. I mean, I had lots of feedback from the first pack, and like I said, they were just built for my own. Well, the initial concepts were just my own. Like, I just wanted to be able to come up with some melodic content, and the idea was record it all out as MIDI, and then afterwards I'll cherry pick some of the best bits and turn it into a song. And then came the kind of performance aspect to it. But with this one, it's exactly what you just said. It's about how can it be not completely random, because that can be cool, but it can also not really work out. But it's coming up with that balance, and the looping aspect, I thought, allowed me to have the balance between, if you've got that kind of something constant, and then it's the balance of, well, how much of something random can you have before it becomes too random. But
Yeah.
being able to have the choice makes the difference. And something familiar and looping and something not, it's just enough to kind of excite me as I'm listening to it. So yeah, that was the idea anyway. So that's good. I'm glad you found that.
I was having a lot of fun with that device, where I was sending it to the delay on the return channel, like 100%, and I was muting the actual track and just
Okay.
getting these, and the feedback on the delay was like 95%, so it was like forever. So it was starting to produce these like lush chords,
Oh, that's cool.
so
Yeah.
like it was just the delay and just filtered, and it just became kind of like a mush. But if you have only certain notes going,
Yeah.
they don't clash as much. And
Yeah.
so my plan was, this was like at 1 a.m. last night, and my plan was to record that, and then start using that as like kind of these little like backgrounds, for other things to
Yeah.
sit on top of, maybe like it'd be fun to like put some sort of side chaining, some gating or something. But it was a fun way to like kind of just give the delay something to work with,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a sound designy kind of way. So it wasn't really so much that I was getting the melodies, I was just getting like the kind of like, like reverberation, the kind
Yeah,
of just
just like texture.
decay, texture. Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah, that's cool. I think when I was whenever I'm testing these out, I'm always using a really sharp, short, plucked kind of instrument. Because I'm usually more interested in, well, when you're developing, you're really interested in the timing, and I really try to get the timing sort of just as least latency as possible. So I'm always testing with sharp, short sounds. But some of my favorite things to do is to run the sequencers, run them really, really slow, and use like really kind of slow attacking kind of pad, and just really elongated. And it's a similar thing to what you're getting then, rather than these kind of fast, kind of frantic, melodic, random passages. I'm getting these really slow moving notes with long attacks, long releases coming in and out. Yeah, I really like those as well, and they kind of work for some of some of the stuff I'm doing, definitely.
Must be kind of fun after you create these things to then start to realize like some of the other things you can do that you didn't really intend or think about beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the first fun thing, I don't know if fun's the word or relief that they work,
Yeah.
because the amount of time you have to put in to something before you can test it can be quite huge. Like some of them are quite quick. Some of them you can start getting something happening very quickly in like a testing environment, and you know it's going to work. And then other times, Ghost was probably one of those, because Ghost was very random, and I think the way I made it was so the Ghost have the same behavior as the ghosts in the real game, in that they get to a sort of a junction and they make a random decision which way to go, but they don't go back unless that's the only way to go. So I was kind of playing with all these things, thinking about the speed up, the slow down, accents, and even the way the notes are kind of already pre-laid out underneath, and all you are doing is choosing the different note grids. And it's a really bizarre concept compared to usually how we step sequence, in that we activate a step and choose the pitch. This one doesn't have that. It has these kind of note layouts already underneath, and I think I'd spent so long. I'd been a good like month or two trying things out just visually, so seeing how they worked visually, and before I could actually trigger an instrument with it. I think the first time I actually triggered it with an instrument and it worked, and it actually did something quite musical. It was like, oh, great, it works. My work's not been a complete waste of time. But yeah, then when you actually get them running, and I think it's the first time they do something that's, for me, sounds musical, something melodic that I couldn't do myself. That's the one that gets me, is when it's the whole purpose of these was to fill my own personal gaps, and if other people like them, brilliant. And when they actually do something that I guess ticks those boxes, that's the fun bit, yeah. Where it's like, I would never have come up with that, and it's done it. That's great. I love that, and that's kind of what I look for in a lot of other sequencers or instruments as well. Is that kind of something that I can control, and it does something that I would not have kind of predicted or thought of myself. They're the kind of things I like.
Yeah, I guess you see that every once in a while in certain pieces of gear where they're intended for one purpose, and then, people take it and run with it, and next thing you know, there's a whole new genre of music coming out because of that sequencer or that particular filter screech or something like that.
yeah, definitely.
I'm having a lot of fun with them, and I think it's just really nice when making music is fun, when
absolutely.
It's like a game almost, and when it's like you're playing music, just dealing with like the technical stuff, and this sort of kind of there's some surprise to it. I don't know, it's fun, and I think I sometimes think about this a lot with a lot of the music I like. I wonder how much of it is like nostalgia, is it?
Yeah.
Is half the fun like me watching that Ghost from Pac-Man, or like, or just like other music, like I love the 8-bit sounds so much, for instance, or like a lot of the production techniques from like 80s music. Is that
absolutely.
because that's when I was a kid, or is it's hard to like separate, like, I guess, like that feeling of nostalgia from like the actual appreciation.
Totally. I mean, that's the whole Stranger Things. When I first heard the soundtrack to that, it just kind of ignites so many sort of memories and emotions. It's just got that kind of, it really doesn't. Yeah, to go to the nostalgia thing, maybe I probably could have made what the arcade devices do. They could have absolutely been built without any reference at all to.
Yeah.
Even though they clearly are inspired by the games, and some of the movements are, you could still have them not inspired by. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's the fun aspect. You're spending so much time, sitting at this system to make music. I need to enjoy it. It needs to be fun as well. And yeah, sometimes just a quirky little sequencer just kind of gives you that little bit of surprise and fun that was missing before. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah, like it's funny how some instruments are just kind of like a chore to use, and others are just jump out at you and you want to tweak with. I've always got that out of the teenage engineering stuff. They've really done a nice job making it just enjoyable and fun to tinker with.
It looks great. I've had a go on the OP1, but I've never actually bought one. I think it's one of the ones I'm still kind of looking at, like, oh, I really want that. I think that's one of the problems of Eurorack. It's like I can't look at anything else now.
Yeah.
You know, but that would definitely be the one.
That is, if you told me I did give away all my synths, it might be the one I keep. Of all of them, just there's so many different ways you can use it, and I do love. There's like a little magic to it, like the knobs aren't. It's not like filter cutoff, or it's not attack on the envelope or modulation amount all the time. It's like this character's changing his body shape. Like it's just like, I think when you can get so like mathematical and so technical about what you're doing when you're doing music and sound design, that it's kind of fun when you're just listening and you're not thinking like, well, if I increase the decay to 5.5 seconds, then I can have my I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the arcade series is definitely something that lets you feel that way, where it's kind of like, oh, what if I put this here? Oh, wow, that was cool. Or that didn't work.
Yeah.
That was...
Oh, that's cool.
Well, listen, it's been really awesome talking to you. Finally, I've been such a fan of what you're doing for so long now, and I love it. I have to thank you for doing it. It's definitely enriched my work a lot and given me some more fun in what I do. So
that's really good to hear.
Yeah, seriously, it has. It's I've been so excited. Darren has been like teasing me a little bit about this like series coming out, and it was pretty cool to see the some of the features you got when you guys put out like some of those teaser images.
Yeah.
They made their ways around the internet, which is pretty cool. Like, I kept seeing articles pop up. Now you can play Pac-Man when you make music.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool.
Oh, they were really funny, actually. They were, I think there was a few that got picked up and they didn't really look into it, and they were sort of saying, those people were saying, well, what's the point of playing Pac-Man? Like, people thought it was a literal sort of interpretation of the game, so that was quite challenging.
Exposing their lack of due diligence there, I guess.
Yeah, it's quite funny.
Happens a lot. Yeah, but it's really cool work, and I'm excited for it, and I think people are going to be really into it. I'm sure you're already getting some good feedback from it.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Well, look, thank you. It's been really good to talk, and huge fan of your stuff as well. So,
thanks, man.
It's just been good for us to finally talk. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Are you heading to Loop this year?
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah,
hopefully.
I'm not, but
okay.
Okay. Maybe with touch base, you can tell me how it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Well, is there any place in particular you would like to direct people to go if they want to check out more of your work?
Probably just the Isotonic website, so isotonicstudios.com. All my stuff's up there, really, and there's a really cool team, like, as you mentioned, Darren. I need to say a big up and a big thank you to Darren. He's been really good with the whole just guidance and kind of getting things going. But he's got a really good team. There's some really good developers of Isotonic. There's a really good ethos across the whole team. And everyone's doing interesting stuff. And I think everyone's doing really, stuff that you won't find anywhere else. So I would definitely recommend checking the Isotonic Studios website out.
Oh, yeah. I can second that. I mean, there's so many cool things and all different kinds of things, whether it's a certain controller you're using or just some kind of crazy way to interact with music you've never thought of before.
Yeah.
It's like all covered. Even just some straight up like Ableton Live racks and stuff. Really good stuff going on there. Yes, I second that endorsement.
Cool.
Awesome. So we'll say our goodbyes here, then we'll wrap up afterwards. But again, this has been Mark Towers. He's just released the Arcade Series Returns, a bunch of, I guess, generative sequencers inspired by old school video games. They're just fun, so you got to check them out. It's a fun way to make music and come up with ideas you wouldn't normally come up with. So thanks again, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, and everyone else here, have a great day.